This is what the waterfall will look like on the front cover, and it does actually stay in place, but I like interactive journals, so we're going to do a little extra. Guys, it's Jamie here, and we're continuing with this series of making a journal out of an old book, the pages that were inside the book, any ephemera or papers that I had sitting around on my desk, and the prompts from the 2022 Febcraft prompt. What we've done so far is put together the cover, which is in the previous video, which I will try to link in the description below, and the signature that we're putting into the middle. And the reason the signature is so small is we will be bulking up both inside covers, and that will then give us a much chunkier journal. It's a hybrid journal lap book that we're going for here. To put the signature in, I tend to use a 3-stitch process because it's nice and simple, and so I will take you through how to do that. If you have already done this or know how to do it, there are timestamps in the description, and you can go down to the next section that might be of interest to you. So you don't have to watch something you already know how to do, you can skip forward. 3-hole process. We're going to go for the middle of the spine and measure 3 holes. So normally 1 in the center, 2 either side. I'm going to, even though it won't catch all the papers because we've got different height papers in here, I am going to put them fairly apart, so some papers will only be held by 1 stitch, not 2. I think that should be okay. I've never done that before. I'm going to say a halfway point is just under 1.5. We want to go center of this spine, so we want the full length. I think that's about 21, so 10.5 is halfway. On that mark then, I'm going to go, how many centimeters am I going to go? 8 centimeters this way, and then 8 centimeters. So we know everything from the center point has to be 8 centimeters from the central point. So we know on these papers, when we get to the center bit, come to punch those through. Now, some people just line it up and punch it. I like to mark things out. So checking all those papers are nicely pushed in, we're going to do our measuring. So again, we want full length, 22, so it's 11 is halfway. And then from that, again, 8 centimeters one way and 8 centimeters the other way. This will not be perfect, but it will be close enough that you can thread these papers through each other and through the spine. We have an awl, a little sharp pokey tool. So taking our pokey tool, and we are going to poke a hole through the spine like that, and it's up to you how big or not you poke it. Next one, this one, same idea, poke a hole through this one, hole through this one, and a hole through this one. Normally I use a wax thread, which is a stiffened thread. So I bought this all as a little kit with the blunt needles as well, with the big eyes. Important if you have bad eyesight. However, because this cover is blue and I do not have blue wax thread, I have blue embroidery thread, and you can just use the embroidery thread, but I happen to have some beeswax. So I am going to wax my own thread. But we want 3 times the length. So 1, 2, 3. You don't need to do any for luck. That is, in my experience, ample. And apparently to wax thread, you run it along the wax somehow. This just helps your thread pass easier. Stiffens it up slightly. Oh, I've got a knot in there, and stops the fraying. Sew these papers in. On the central one we go through, and then we go through the cover on the central one. We pull it. My hands are now waxy. Then if I can, I try to hold that with my thumb so you don't pull the thread all the way through. Then you can go to the top hole or the bottom hole, doesn't really matter because you're going to go to both, and you go through the cover hole. I'm pushing through a bit, but there we go. Sorry, I don't know if that was mega clear, but it's just a question of fiddling basically. Then we go all the way to the top one, go through that hole. Right, now I'm going to tighten it up a little bit, and when you come through this hole, this middle hole, for the second time, you want to keep this thread on this side and not to go through the actual thread. Try to avoid going through that thread and bring it up the other side. Now I'm just going to straighten the pages up in the book, move some things out my way, pull it tighter, check it, sitting a little high, see if we can get it to sit down a bit, tie a knot, go the opposite way to the way that you've just tied the knot, tie it again, and then I tend to do a third one. That is your signature into your book. I have a ridiculous amount of junk mail envelopes, and what I want to do with this one, which I've never done before, is do a waterfall of pockets, and instead of it being top loading pocket, they're going to be side loading either way, but they're going to sit on top of each other. I don't want them to get too fat, but I want them to have an ability that when you flip them up, you can journal on the reverse or add a photo. Let's do 4x4. 4x4, we're going to make some squares. In centimetres, that's 10. You can, obviously, if you want to, use ready-made envelopes. And then we're going to go 10 across. That looks pretty square to me. I'm going to make 6 of those. And then they're going to be quite easy to cover. And they're going to need a hinge at the back. Have our 6 little square envelopes. I quite like the fact they're square. They will need to be covered and collaged, or some kind of paper, if you've got a decorative paper you want to use, can be put on these. I will probably collage because it's one of my favourite things to do. The other thing I want to do is give them a hinge, which is just a way that they can attach to the page. We are going to do something like along these lines. Part of the point of this journal is to show that it was book page. It's not to hide the fact it was book page. Folding it in half to create a hinge. So the triangle is at the top of the triangle and on the top of there. If I put that down, that might make a bit more sense. Where you can write, it's white. I don't think you need to cover that one. Others may have marks on them that you want to cover. That is fine as it is. That piece will then attach to the inside cover so it can flip up like that. Yay! I'm going to hinge all of the envelopes and at the same time cover this part of the envelope with old book page from that book. Pop a bit of book page down. I was going to use things that were in my stash over here to try and trim it down. I have these journaling cards that are sciencey. I don't want them as journaling cards. I'm going to add them as a background on here. I did say things on my floor, and this was right next to my desk. This is some stamping I did quite a while ago. I'm going to get that on there. I will do all 6 with the backgrounds. Here's all our little pockets. Next thing I'm going to do is dry brush over these front pockets with a bit of white gesso. Not much, just to tone it down a bit, because this is background, and anyone who watches my videos will know this is one of my favourite things to do when doing any kind of masterboard, and all that's on here at the moment to me is a mini masterboard. So now we can see a slight difference, which means that when we put our final pieces on, they will stand out more against that background. That background has now faded. Another way you could do this would be to use a white paper napkin over the top, just one ply of it, but that would give you wrinkles and you may not want that texture. I'm trying to think how else you could do this. You could run some white watercolour crayon round and smudge it in a bit. There's a couple of things to do to these. One is to cut out a keyhole and glue them up so that the keyhole area is the only bit that is going to be the side that the journaling card goes in and out of. So for example, on this one we'll do it here, we'll go about halfway and we'll create a pull area. And then the other thing we need to do is seal up anything else that's been cut open. So along the top is the only area that is cut open on this one. I have made these stickers. I went on PicsArt, which is an app on my phone, typed in the word roses, got all of these onto one sticker sheet and have cut them out. I have some butterflies, and I don't know where they came from, but I had some butterfly stickers. I still have a big pile of scraps that was on my desk, and I have a sheet of words that I've already started to use, so they count. Basically anything sitting on my desk that's been used counts towards getting this using up some scraps. So I have bits and pieces of paper here, etc. And then all we're going to do is probably a 3 collage rule, but maybe not, where we're going to lay a sticker down, and then I'm going to just take some bits and rip them. These are just going to frame the rose a little bit on here. So we're going to stick something like that down. That I probably will edge. I think I'll edge it with the dark brown, which is the espresso distress ink. A 3-part collage is 1 piece, 2 piece, and then your top bit that you want to stand out. Could get a word, could put the believe there, that behind the rose, and then we have a little focal point, and that is one of our flips done. The one that goes underneath it, I want the opening to be the other way. So this time the opening will be this side. We're going to do a keyhole this side and seal up the other 2. Roughly halfway. I am not trying to make everything perfectly equal between one and the next one. If you were, you would just hold one envelope up against the next envelope and do the pull that way. I will demonstrate. You would put one against the other. Oh, look at that, almost perfect anyway. I did it naturally, and then cut it, recut it using one as a template. Wow, with my eyesight I'm amazed I did that. Okay, 5 collage rule, 5 pieces, with 1 piece, the roses, as the central. Still have some of this left. and the whole point was to start to use up stuff that was on my desk. This is from this science kit. I think I might cut one of those tickets. Tickets don't quite go the way I want. Maybe I could do a microscope. Okay, lovely. 1, 2, 3. Need another thing. A bit of cardboard here. How does that look? Find your passion, because we've got the science on there, so might be someone's passionate about science. That works there. So all of this just needs to go down. I will continue to do the next 4 envelopes, and then we will put them onto that front cover. This is what the waterfall will look like on the front cover, and it does actually stay in place, but I like interactive journals, so we're going to do a little extra. We're going to make from a book page a couple of belly bands that have a little tie, and the belly bands will also have secret pockets. So let's make the belly bands, and I want to use up these book pages. These should be okay lengthwise. So to make a secret pocket, we're going to take 2 book pages. They are quite thick book pages and they're not disintegrating, so they're quite strong, which is good. Now we can actually do 2 and 2, so even stronger. So we're going to glue 2 together. I will leave a bit of a margin on this one. Then we want to halve the width. And now half the length. So now I have 2 potential secret belly band pockets. The top one is the one that's going to be seen, and the other 2 will make part of the pocket. This is the 1.5 inch. There. Make the pockets, glue the base. This one, the glue will go along the opposite edges. Now we have the beginnings of a belly band with pockets. Taking a dry brush, going to knock this back a bit. That's the white gesso on. Now I'm going to ink stamp these belly bands with some illegible script in a permanent ink. This is Memento Black, I think, and I've put them on this to make the surface that they're being stamped on just a little bit softer, just holding it so the ink absorbs. Oops. And then popping that to one side. I'm going to use the Mod Podge to put this napkin over the 2 parts of the belly band, and I'm putting the top coat on as gently as possible so not to tear that napkin. This needs recutting in. I can see where it was though. There we go. And to edge it, I think this time I'm going to edge it with a blue, and the blue that's my favourite is the Salvage Patina in the Distress Oxide. I have a few Distress Oxides that are always close at hand. Salvage Patina is one of them, Victorian Velvet's another, the Espresso, the Antique Linen, the Vintage Photo. What I have here is some of the scrap from making the pockets, and we're going to cut this down lengthways. And then looking at the back of these belly bands, you can't write on them, but we could cut this to fit and create a secret pocket, which I think would be super fun, and get it onto here. Effectively stick this to the page so that one comes down from the top and one comes up from the bottom. we are going to hinge them. We will just use a bit of book page for that. Create the hinge by folding it. That one's going to be on the bottom, so that hinge will go there. That's still a bit too big. I'll just cut it down then. This will attach to the back of this belly bandy thing on one part of that hinge, and then the other part will attach to the inside cover. The other thing I want to do is to put 2 buttons on these pages opposite each other. We have something where we can create a tie. I have 2 buttons that are a similar size. I'm not overly keen on the pattern, but when you turn them over they are plain. And I think one way to do this will be just to use a bit of the Mod Podge, real scrap of what's left over of the napkin, and cover the buttons with the napkin. To finish off the buttons, just going to use a bit of sandpaper. You can also use an emery board, a nail file, and take off these edges. And then another little finishing touch, although these buttons will be glued to these, would be to put some thread through this. This is actually the same colour thread that the signature was stitched into the journal with, creating some fake stitches. That's the little buttons done, and now we just need to glue them opposite each other onto here. I'll be using the Fabri-Tac glue again and holding it in place because they are a bit wobbly, because the knot is raising them up from the card, which we want because that will be how the thread will go through and round. Placing that one basically opposite it so we can get the positioning reasonably equal. Quite a little bit of glue on here. Make sure we get these ends down and plenty on that bobbly bit. Notice I'm lining the stitches up as well so that they are horizontal. That seems about the same. While the buttons are drying in place, I want to make sure that the back of these pockets can be journaling spots. I'm taking some old sticker paper and just cutting it down and then putting it over the back pocket so that it's something you could journal on. First thing we want to attach is these, because they will eventually close over the waterfall of the pockets. The way to attach them to this is going to be to use our hinging system. Plenty of glue, and I will probably put a weight over these while it dries to make sure that glues down properly. That is about halfway and that looks reasonably straight. The next one hinging at the top. This is now secure and lifts up nicely. The hinging is working, and you have your little secret pockets on the back. And now we just need to put these down, and we're going to put them so they all sit under each other. And again, these are hinged, so they will flip as well. I think the way to space them will be so you can see these wordings. Now we just need to start gluing it all down, starting with the top one and working from there, gluing along that hinge there. Centrally, just check. It needs to go slightly that way. As soon as we've got one in, it then becomes a lot easier to place the next lot. We'll be finishing a little bit high. We could do another one. Might make a couple of 1 or 2 more envelopes, but I'm sure you're getting the idea. I can do those off camera. The next thing is to get a piece of thread to go round this that's going to hold that in place. I'm going to use the same thread that has been used to sew this in and on these buttons. And like with the sewing in, I'm going to wax the thread so that it is stiffer. This is just beeswax. I'm running the thread through the wax so it picks up a wax coating. I will run it back the other way. So it's gone through twice. I'm going to make sure to coat the ends because I don't want those fraying. Wrap it around this top one and tie a knot. To trim this bit up, what you would do is you would tie it with a figure of 8 around the 2 buttons to hold everything into place. But what I will do is I'm going to pop a bit of extra glue under this button here because I want that super secure. Apart from me doing a couple more of these little square envelope for journaling cards, that is the inside front cover made. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help this video get pushed out to more people on YouTube. Another way you can help this channel for free is to subscribe it, simply like follow on any other social media, and let me know what you think of this little project in the comments below. And I will see you next time.